Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our American Scouser Fantasy Premier League show. I'm your host, Gally, and I am, of course, joined by my good friend, the Red Arrow from Chicago. I love the name.
Thank you. I feel like it is an identity that I should really hold on to because I don't think it's something that I'm going to shake anytime soon. So I might as well embrace it as much as I can.
Well, if you can't make fun of yourself, who can we make fun of? So I give you credit. It's well worth it. It's a good play by you. So we come in here as we walk in like we do every single week, thinking about how we're going to make our moves and what we're going to do for the upcoming match week. Did you learn anything
Do
from
I
the
ever?
last couple weeks? Have you started to think about maybe not utilizing transfers or over making moves?
No, because clearly I still keep making the same mistakes. So no, I've not learned anything. I've learned that no matter what I say, or no matter what I feel in this hour that I have with you, it's all crap because I turn around and do the opposite. And it's just like, why can't I just listen to what I say on the show just for a moment, take this moment in with Gally, listen to him too sometimes, and then just don't fucking do anything. Like just sit pat for one one moment. But yeah, so that's no, I didn't learn anything. Did you learn anything?
I didn't learn much. I mean, I learned maybe don't make rash decisions, say you're not going to do things, then make that same transfer and use up that free one that you need this week for the double. But before we get going, if you are in between this show and next week's show and you think to yourself, where could I be chatting about fantasy EPL stuff? Where could I be talking about random bits of fashion? Where could I be frustrated about booze? Where could I learn about a good Irish television show? You could join our American Scouser Discord channel.
That's a nice transition.
So it's open all the time. It's there. It's ready for you. It is basically therapy for those that need it, or as we like to call, just a place for us to banter. So go ahead, click on the link inside the chat now, create a username, look at all of our creepy emojis as we say hello. But it's a fun place. There's a lot of good discussions there, and we would really love to see you join. So we jump into the fantasy show like we always do, looking at the American Scouser Cup. As we walk in, Pep has still continued to hold a lead across the top. Guns and Nunez could not make a move this week, even though Pep's score wasn't the highest, but it keeps him inside the top 10,000. So, another red arrow. Once again, since we started talking about this player, they have just precipitously dropped in the standings, which is basically the curse of this podcast. But good performances across the board, few high scores, but nobody really jumping off the charts at the top of our table. We have a lot of people playing the template, and it's going to take a big move here, I think, for anyone to make a move at the top of our American Scouser Cup.
Do you want me to say anything to that?
Not unless you have anything to add to that.
No, that's it.
Brilliant. They don't call him the best color commentator person in fantasy sports for nothing, people.
Oh, God.
So as we look here, maybe a slide. He probably wishes he had something to say on the last slide. We'll be talking less about this one. Walked into the week like usual, sticking out his chest, talking a lot of shit, taking a big L. And I mean, not just an L, but an L to a man who
still has Cancelo on his team.
Not on the team, has Cancelo in his starting lineup.
Which is just an auto sub, whatever. No big deal,
But I mean, he also has two other players who aren't playing currently.
Well, this is because he hasn't changed his team since the beginning when everyone still believed in Liverpool. And the Liverpool assets were what took him over the line against me this week. And I have to give Timichin credit. I give him credit for setting a perfect lineup 24 weeks ago and knowing that this would be the week that he would win and bring me my second loss of the year. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it is fair seeing that VJ picked up a win this week as well.
See, it's a weird world. Told you, this is the week that everyone won who hasn't changed their team since week 1.
Yeah, it was a good time. Kelly's getting closer and closer, as we'll see in our next slide. Just 6 points back
Just call me
and
Marcel.
ahead now in the overall score. So has the head-to-head tiebreaker. Should you guys be equal on points at this point with the overall score in the standings? One more person moving ahead of you in the overall standings, by the way. But well, it's probably about 100,000 people in those 2 points that are ahead of you in those standings.
I think it's more, 190,000. I dropped, so I'm in the 2 million range, and it's not a good feeling. It's been a while since I've been in this range. I think like week 4.
Boaz is asking us what's good, everything and
Not our
all
fantasy.
things. Also acknowledging it's a shame that I didn't play. It is a shame you didn't play. It would have been fun to have you in the league because at least we know you would have showed up every week. Made a lot of comments, probably switched a bunch of players around, got mad about a bunch of things you couldn't control. And more importantly than anything, probably would have lost to Timuchin in a bad week like last week. Oh, wait, no, that's just the other fellow Chicagoan. But I'm really proud of him. He's handling this really, really well these last 5 to 8 match weeks that he's decided to allow his team to implode.
I have decided it is just time to have fun, and I don't care about the scores anymore. You can put a big old white screen on there. I'm just here to have fun, Gally, and that's really what this is all about, right, guys? Whoever wants to really win anything, come on, it's ridiculous.
Well, if you wanted to win last week, we would have looked at a side like this. So this is the team of the week last week. Leno in goal, little bit of a surprise. Obviously a back line. Coleman, Emerson Royale, Trent, and Ben Davies. And who exactly expected any of those players to be in the top of the fantasy defenders last week?
Absolutely no one. I feel like we talked about possibly James Tarkovsky as being a decent choice, and it was a decent choice for this week. It just Coleman just happened to have an extra return that bumped him above Tarkovsky. So I think no one. There have been some Spurs defensive assets that people have liked throughout the year. Emerson Royale and Davies have not been the names of those. It's been either Perisic or what's his face, Dyer. So not who we expected. And then Trent's been on a downward slope fantasy wise and in real life too. So it's good to see his name back on there because we got so used to seeing his name on the team of the week for the last couple of years, almost weekly, that now it's great to see his name back up there again. And it has posed some questions for people. Defensively, looking at Liverpool, and we'll get into this later. Do you bring on Trent for the mere fact that he can give you offensive returns and not worry about the fact that Liverpool will give up 2 or 3? Maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely an option or an idea. Even with the matchups they have in the next couple matches, I don't think you have to worry about 2 or 3 even. Just based on the fact that it's Palace and Wolves, and I don't know that they've scored 2 or 3 goals combined in the last 4 or 5 matches.
3 past Liverpool, though. That's
first of all, that was Crazy Town. Crazy Town, different time. I'm pretty sure that there's not going to be a center back pairing of Gomez and Matip in the next matchup against Wolves, and if there is, we're in real trouble. So if we look at this midfield, let's jump past the Man United players for a moment and focus between Eze, Ward-Prowse, and obviously Bernardo Silva. And let's just throw it in because there's only the one guy up top. The idea that Chris Wood is your lone striker in a fantasy team of the week is just comical in itself. Just shows you the volatility of the striker position in fantasy EPL every single week. Especially now that we're all investing so much money at the striker position, and Chris Wood with a tap-in ridiculous goal that had no bearing happening
against
whatsoever.
City of all teams.
Yeah, it's just a joke in itself. But it killed people probably like you that had Ederson in goal.
Yeah.
James Ward-Prowse, another ridiculous Ronaldo-esque, Beckham-esque free kick. Eze pops up with a goal. Bernardo Silva playing out of left back, scoring a goal. And Chris Wood with a tap in just over the line right after he gets subbed down. And I don't know if you actually heard the game. The game was great. It was on like Talk Sport. And when they brought on Chris Wood as a sub, the announcer literally spent 4.5 to 5 minutes straight absolutely undressing Chris Wood while he was not a Premier League player and or striker. And then as he scores the goal, the like commentator is just like, you could almost hear him like throwing his papers up in the air. And he's like, of course it's Chris Wood. Just look at me. Like, it was outstanding. It was just great self-deprecation, but he's not wrong because I kind of agree with him. This was just a train wreck of a fantasy week, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we had the top 10K. I think the overall was 51 pretty much for the week. If you were in the top 10, kind of a good average. So having, scoring between 45 to 55 points being a really good week in terms compared to the rest of the world makes it for a really bizarre week. And it's not because we didn't see a lot of goals. We saw a lot of goals. We just saw them from all different sorts of avenues that we typically don't see them come from. We saw teams getting clean sheets that we haven't seen them get clean sheets before for the last couple of weeks here as well. And, that's a recipe for just having a very wacky game week where you have Chris Wood as the top striker of the entire week, which is it's crazy to think about. But that's what happens. And, it's hard. You can't predict those kinds of things. And so it's, most of these players will be brought back to earth here shortly. But every once in a while, you need one of these weeks to kind of throw a wrench into some people's ears. And every once in a while, you have possibly one of these differentials. Maybe you had a Coleman because you had a situation where you needed to bring someone in. You brought Coleman in for whatever reason, or you brought in Ward-Prowse because, you wanted a Southampton asset for some reason. And, he's the best one to have. And so, or maybe you brought in Bernardo Silva because, like, I don't know which midfielder Pep's going to bring in. So if I just bring in Bernardo Silva, maybe I'll get lucky. And so those are the nice differentials you might get, but it'll average out throughout the rest of the year.
So as you start to think about these, and I agree with you, the one thing we didn't talk about there were the two United assets. Obviously, Rashford just absolutely on fire, and Fernandez,
best player in the
It's really hot and cold. He's hit or miss. It's working and it's not. I think it's still a little too much investment for my blood in his overall output. Plus, I think there's just better assets in the midfield with Saka, with Martinelli. Even now with this week with Gakpo coming up with the double game week. So I think that if you have Fernandez, it's an easy transfer out. And I kind of wish I had Fernandez because I have an easier avenue to mow this week. But before we get to the ins and outs, I just want to pick your brain on Rashford. So last week I had the captain's armband on Rashford until about 15 minutes before the deadline. Classic galley fashion. I moved it off out of straight fear and went back to Holland. Only cost myself about 300,000 places in the standings by not making that move. It's 2 weeks in a row I've been tempted to deviate away from Holland, both of which would have been massive, massive swings for me. At what point do people forget about Holland scoring 20 and 18 points in the first 5 to 10 matches and not start to look at the fact that he's scored less than about 8 other strikers over the last 6?
I think this is the moment where we start really looking into that, especially when we start seeing a bunch of double game weeks, with a lot of teams having them and City not necessarily having them. It makes that decision so much easier. If you have a player like Salah, a player like Saka, a player like, whoever, where they have these double game weeks, it makes so much more sense to move off of Holland. But it is still difficult because if you kind of have to look at it. Do you want to stick with the rest of the pack, or do you want to make a move? If you feel like you want to be safe and you're in a place where you want to feel like you're not taking a big risk, putting the captain's armband on Haaland is a safe choice, because with his effective ownership, what happens is if he doesn't do well, you don't get burned by it. But if he does really well, you're not going to necessarily benefit too much, but you're also going to just stay within the pack. And this is sort of like if you're in the top maybe 600,000 to 700,000 and you want to stay there kind of within striking distance, if your goal is top 300,000, whereas like someone like me who is just looking miles away from first place, what I could be looking at is just going, you know what, I just want to have some fun. Maybe I'll just move off of Haaland entirely now, because I'm kind of I'm tired of the perma captain, and that's kind of the thing we fell into with Mo for a couple of years, right? It just everyone's like, well, just put the armband on Mo, easy decision, no big deal. I think people got bored by it, and the people who benefited from not putting the armband on Mo on certain times, they really did benefit from him. But if you didn't put your armband on him and he had a great haul, you really hurt. So it's one of those things where I think it depends on where you are in the standings. So depending on if you want to get somewhere within striking distance and move up a couple spots, you might take the chance, or you might just stick with the crowd. So
Paul Bickler chimes in and says 3 to 4 weeks. I'm assuming that's in response to my question around how long do you hang on to Haaland. And then chimes in with Mahrez has been City's most consistent player from an output standpoint, in my opinion. And I completely agree with him. Little worried only because Mahrez started the Champions League match, sat during the week, which is a classic Pep move to have him sit again on the weekend. Now, I'll say this. I'm a little worried that this might be a matchup against Bournemouth where Haaland gets to sit from the start. It's going to happen eventually. It hasn't happened in a while. I think there's been one league match so far this year he hasn't started. Alvarez definitely has to be in line. You have Foden playing again. Grealish probably playing the best football, as much as it makes me sick to say, in his time at City, and even at times De Bruyne coming back to his form. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the City assets. But let's take a look at, with the double game week coming in with Liverpool and Arsenal, at the transfers in. And I don't think there's any surprise in the world that a Mo Salah that's gotten attacking returns in 3 straight fixtures, including the Champions League midweek. We see Mo Salah and Gakpo at the top of the transfers in, good 700,000 to 850,000 combined between the two of them. Tarkowski at the cheap ass 4.2 Sean Dyche defensive price. Plus, he's proven that he is a real threat. He almost scored. He scored against Arsenal. He almost scored against Liverpool. And I think he had big opportunities last week, 2 big opportunities last week as well. So I think Tarkowski's a good shout. And then Alexander-Arnold and Saka. Any surprise here, obviously, with very heavy double game week players?
No, I think the only one that might be a little surprising is Trent, only because of his price tag. I feel like that would be one that would be harder to get to than the rest. Because when you think about it, if you're going for someone like Salah, you probably have KDB or Bruno that you could get to him. Gakpo, you could get off of Martinelli possibly, or maybe a cheaper United mid if that's what you have. Tarkowski, like you said, very cheap, 4.2, easy to get to. Saka in that 7.8 to 8.3 range, that's easy to get to depending on which mid you had. And so I think the only one that's really surprising is Trent because of his price and how difficult he might be to get to. But I'm not surprised because he does have a double game week, and we're seeing the output that he used to consistently have. And yes, you're going to sacrifice possibly a clean sheet. I mean, this week maybe not, because it depends on what you're bringing him in for. Are you bringing him in for the next 5 weeks, or you're bringing him just in for this week? Because if you're bringing him just this week, there's a good clean sheet opportunity there as well as offensive returns or attacking returns, excuse me. So I think long term, though, if I am looking at someone like Trent, I don't know if I do necessarily feel good about that. But for this week especially, it absolutely makes sense.
Are you bringing in any of these 5 players?
I have looked at bringing in all 5 at one point because I don't have any of these. Yeah. Um, so it's very difficult for me right now to bring in Mo. And that's what I've learned is it's really tough. And even if I still had the free transfer, I would have to take a -4 because I need to make an extra move to make that work money-wise. So I might just do a Mahrez to – I can't do a Mahrez to Saka because I already have 3 Arsenal assets. So I'm going to have to take a hit either way. So yeah, I don't know. Are you thinking about anyone from the bringing anyone onto your team from there?
I'll get there in one sec. Jamie says lots of double game weeks, plenty of chances to turn those red arrows green, and I do agree with him. He also says I've got my free hit and wild card to think about. So we're gonna get to chip play in a little bit, Jamie. I'll say that. Well, I have Saka already. So obviously he is firmly planted in my team. And at the moment, the captain armband is on him. That is primarily because I have not figured out a way to get Salah into my side either. I haven't stomached the idea of getting rid of Holland, which is one avenue to get me there. Obviously I could go Holland to Darwin and then move up somewhere to Salah, and whether that be, I've actually thought about basically Holland, Mitrovic, Martinelli to Darwin, Salah, and Nketiah, which for this week, I think I win no matter who scores or what happens. I'm pretty sure I get a net gain there. Sure. But I think I can do it without the -4 and maybe just not go Salah and just go like Mitrovic to Darwin and or I could go Gakpo. Like I can make moves and get the doubles without taking the -4. So that's kind of where I've toyed. I still have James, which I want to really move on from. But any of the underlying numbers tell me like once Chelsea gets going, Reece James is the guy you want in your side. And he's I went through the whole injury without wasting the transfer to get rid of him. And I did it with green arrows. So now it's frustrating to like move on from him as Chelsea's fixtures start to actually turn. But then again, they're not really playing well. So we talked about the incomings. Let's take a look at the transfers out for the week. No real surprise with Trippier and Almiron, both of them having a blank game week. The Pope one with the blank game week kind of surprises me because I don't understand if people realize that the suspension is actually only one game and it's happening in the League Cup. So he's able to play in the next fixture. And if you don't have another second playable goalie, I mean, then honestly, that's just like, it's one of the big misnomers in fantasy is that you don't need 2 keepers. And this is why, because transferring keepers is arguably the worst thing you can do. The best thing you can do is pick a goalie at the beginning of the year, maybe make one move, and then twice with your wild cards, get a keeper you want for 6 or 7 weeks. And then once with a free hit, you get to randomly pick the keeper you want. And with a keeper like Ward, that's 4.1, 4.2, and starts every week, it just doesn't make any sense to me to have one of these non-playing keepers to the point where you'd have to waste a transfer on a player like Pope. I mean, 309,000. What are you people thinking?
I think the only thing that might make sense is that they also have City after their blank. So this just might be a more permanent decision. Like, hey, he's got the red. Well, he's not going to play against City either. So I guess then it goes to Wolves and then Forest. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's maybe one of those reactionary moves where you just sort of you get worried and you just have to move off of him because you don't know what else to expect. Similar to De Bruyne, I feel like, we heard news that he wasn't feeling well and he didn't play. And so everyone's like, you know what? I want to get off of him right away. I don't know what's going to go on with him. But then he's also got maybe Mo.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But maybe
that one makes sense for the easy move. Like monetarily, De Bruyne, if you have De Bruyne right now and you have a transfer and you don't move to Mo, then you just literally think that he's not going to play. He's not going to get both starts, or there's something wrong. Because I mean, Mo Salah getting 2 matches in 1 week compared to Kevin De Bruyne playing Bournemouth is kind of a no-brainer. And the Tony thing is a little surprising. I know Brentford doesn't play, but they also have good fixtures coming up. There's a lot of people that think like the suspension is coming like any day. And when the suspension comes, I know. And that's what I keep saying because I haven't picked him up because of it. Because the way it'll work is I'll pick him up on a Thursday. The match will be Sunday and he'll be suspended on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
That's how that works. And then a guy on my bench will end up sitting that day randomly, like with a stomach bug. Yeah. Thanks, Callum Wilson.
I think, quickly going back to the Pope thing, because what I've been reading a lot of as well, because a lot of people don't have any Liverpool assets really right now, besides maybe one. Some people have been going from Pope to Alisson because of the double. So I've also seen that be part of a move. So I think it'd be interesting to see. I wish we could see breakdowns of where people went from Pope to really get a good sense of why they made that move. Because I think if we saw a percentage breakdown of Pope moved to X or Y or Z, it would give us a better idea of what that was, what the intent was for that.
It wouldn't be a fantasy show without Paul taking a shot at the fantasy lock and the lineup call. Once again, Paul, it's part of the game. It is part of the strategy, but you are just saying for the 150 millionth time. But we appreciate it. Please keep with the comments, those coherent and not. Let's take a look at your team last week.
Let's not.
How frustrated were you with the Mahrez decision by Pep?
I mean, frustrated, sure, but it's something to expect. It's the Pep roulette. So I think ultimately I knew it was going to happen at some point. I just didn't know when. So I was more frustrated by João Felix because I told myself that I didn't want to do it. And then I spent the night afterwards looking at my phone going, I think I want to do it. And then I did it. And then I realized, after the weekend, like, yeah, that's probably a reason why I said I didn't want to do it. So I think overall, it's just, I've been saying this for a couple weeks. I just don't really like where my team is at as a whole. And I know we've talked about chip strategy and being able to use your chips wisely in a way that you don't want to spend your chip just for a single week, so to speak, because you want to be able to set up your bench boost from wildcarding the week before or 2 weeks before. But I really think, I know I say this a lot, but I think I'm in a position where I might just have to go pull a wild card because I think I just want to scrap this entire thing and just build anew because I don't have much faith in anything that I want to do. Whatever I want to get to, I'm at least at a -8 or -12. And I think at that point, I really start to think about justifying the wild card because if that's somewhere where I want to be then for the future, then I'd be more comfortable doing the wild card knowing this is what I want to do for the next 6 weeks anyway.
So this side needs a little bit of maintenance. It does not need a wild card. I mean, literally, this does not need a wild card. You have doubles across the board. Paul's letting you know not to worry. You don't need to sweat it because you got an easy head-to-head this week. I think you are playing Bickler this week. It would be awesome if the Monday pod could take you out back-to-back weeks in honor of Kelly, who is basically like the third member of the pod because it's their job to basically boost her up and make fun of me whenever possible. I don't really think you need to jack up this team yet. I mean, I do think you have an overinflated amount of money invested at your goalkeeper position. I don't, to my last point, do not waste the transfer. You wait for your wild card for that because he's still an active playing keeper. But you have double game weeks in Gabriel and White. You have a double game week in Martinelli. Yes, you have to put Rashford on the bench. At least you don't have Mitrovic in your side. I do think you probably have to think about making a move off of Almiron. It's too bad this isn't the week to do it because you naturally just make that move to Matoma. But he's not playing this week, obviously. I think
Right.
that'll come, and that would, I have to imagine that would happen on your wild card, even if you did it now. I think where you struggle here a little is like Luka Dean and Brandon Williams on your bench and relying on Andreas to actually have to play. Like that's where I think maybe like you have to start to think, like, even in my case, like I got rid of Andreas a few weeks ago. I kept Bailey, but at least I know Bailey's playing every single week and playing in an attacking position. And I know Andreas is in an attacking position, but I still don't really, I don't love it. And I really feel like Fulham has hit the peak of their play. Like I honestly think Fulham ends up finishing somewhere like where we thought they would, between like 15th and 14th and 17th place by the end of the year. Like I think they drop in a we weren't as good as you all thought we really were type of manner as other teams come up. But we'll see what happens with that. So what's your plan if you, I mean, we only have 24 hours. Deadline's tomorrow.
Less than 24 because the game
1:30 tomorrow.
Yeah.
So which means you'll fall asleep and not do anything.
I'll make sure to schedule out some time during work tomorrow. You know, do it the right way. Do it during work while you're getting paid.
Of course.
I think ultimately I get what you're saying too. I think I wanted to get a move to Mo, but the only way to do that is to go up from Mahrez to Mo and then to bring down either Haaland or Kane. And you know, it's not necessarily a terrible idea, but Haaland and Kane are two of the highest scorers in the in FPL this year. I understand Haaland's mostly came towards in the beginning of the year, and Kane's been really consistent, getting you 4 to 6 points every week. But I feel like if I just go from, I would love to have both Saka and Salah. I think that's where my head is at. That I want both Saka and Salah, and to get there, I need to take an 8-point hit. And if that is something that's that's possible, then maybe I go that route. I know I've been reading a lot of people who are doing an 8 or 12-point hit just to be able to save a wild card and a free hit, because there are still plenty of double game week weeks to get through, and especially that big blank in 29. A lot of people are looking to do free hit during that game week there. So I think that's just where my head is at.
You mean 28, right?
28.
28 is the blank. 29 is the one that was just released as the big double game week.
Right. Excuse me. Yeah. So the big blank week, which is 28. You're right. But yeah, because like you said, I don't have any defenders to trust really, and if Arsenal doesn't keep a clean sheet again either game, then it's going to be really tough to see ones across the entire back line again for like the 6th straight fucking week in a row. So, and that's why I feel like I might want to do the wild card, because then I just completely revamp to what I would prefer seeing and be more comfortable with that. But yeah, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Maybe.
The situation where I think the wild card doesn't work here is that we actually don't know what will be of the next 5 match weeks, because we still have another two FA Cup rounds to be played that will affect match weeks in the next 6 weeks. So you're wild carding into a situation where you're bringing in players, which I would think you're trying to bring in at least 6 to 8 players that are going to be part of your side or your squad for at least a month to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But you're bringing them in not knowing which of those matches they're actually going to be scheduled to play. There's other doubles that could happen. There's some doubles that could be removed. I just feel like the whole idea of attacking some of these double game weeks, especially the Brighton doubles. I mean, Brighton's going to end up with 3 separate double game weeks between now and the end of the season. And I mean, that one in 29, I mean, I think it's like Brentford and Bournemouth, both at home.
Bournemouth away, but Brentford at home, yeah.
I mean, that's literally, you need to have Matoma, Estupiñán, and possibly by then either the Ferguson kid as a low striker or Solly March, or I mean, that's just like a no-brainer. Maybe even a Lewis Dunk. there are certain sides that are showing you that they will score you points. And then if you get the doubles, and again, we've talked about this in the past, like I really think maximizing the free hit and the wild card into the bench boost the rest of the way. Most folks have used their triple captain at this point between one of the two Holland double weeks or the Rashford. If you still have it, God bless you, because 29 looks a good week to pick a player and make a move. But then again, I don't know that you make that big of a drastic move in a week where so many teams are playing doubles, because there's going to be so many teams that have high volume scoring weeks because of the vast variety of players that are going to be playing extra minutes. So it'll be interesting to see. So let's take a look here at my side from last week. Wasn't anything to write home about. Wasn't overly frustrated with it. Dropped a bit in the standings. Could have done a little bit better, obviously. I made the smart play. I dropped James all the way to the third on my bench. I knew he wasn't going to play. I felt good about that. I really felt good about the moves I made. I thought that everything worked. Honestly, it was really just making the captaincy switch, picking up the 13 extra points if I had stayed on Rashford. And then maybe, obviously the Mahrez thing was just a frustration. Would have looked brilliant, right, if Mitrovic had started and scored a goal, or if Bailly buries that one against City early and scores the goal, or not. No, it was Bailey had a chance when he came on as a sub in his match against Arsenal to score and put them up 3-1 and didn't score. And it was Ramsdale hit it off the crossbar. That would have looked like a brilliant move right there if that had worked. And he got a 7 or an 8 and comes in and subs in. But it's what it is. Wolves giving up the crappy goal that killed the clean sheet. I thought I was going to, make out starting Bueno in that matchup. But, Estupiñán again, just outstanding. And just like you said, just crap at the defensive end across the board. Holland blanks. Kane doesn't really go off. I'm just lucky I had Rashford.
Yeah, I mean, and Rashford's just been something else since the World Cup. He's just been such good form, good money too. And I think it goes back to, we talked about it in the very beginning of the season, players to look for. We talked about if Ronaldo's not there, Rashford's going to be a really good FPL pick because he was priced so low compared to the past seasons because of the form that he was in last year. They're like, this is almost a no-brainer. And then now we understand why, because on his day, he can be one of the best players in the Premier League. So I think, you said you're trying to move to Mo, ideally? That's where you want to go?
I would love to get Mo in. It's a hard one for me. So I'm like you. I don't want to get rid of Kane or Holland. So I would probably have to make 3 moves and really make like real sacrifices. I think I could, excuse me, the one avenue I could probably go, I think I could go Mitrovic to Darwin.
Do you have any money in the bank?
I have 1.5. I have 1.5 million in the bank. So even if I go Mahrez to Mo, obviously I'm down 2 or 3 million. So then I could maybe go like Reece James to Tarkowski, and then I could maybe from there have to go Mitrovic to a low end striker.
Well, you might be close. You won't have to go too low end, I think. You could go to like Ollie Watkins maybe from Mitchell.
No, he's just slightly lower. It would be tough. I played around with it a lot. It's really hard, and it makes sense though. I mean, let's be honest. It's really hard to have a good balanced side that has Salah, Kane, and Holland in it.
Yeah, right.
And I still want to carry Trippier. I have Rashford. I toyed with transferring out Rashford and Mahrez, and just doing two midfielders to just bolster and go to Mo and a lower midfielder. Um, but I just feel like moving Rashford off at this point is just an absolute waste of a transfer. I'm going to want him back as soon as they're playing again. And I just don't want to get burnt by not having a player in that form. And I've had him for so long. So, it's hard for me on Kane and Holland because they both scored a lot for me. But I am starting to see Mo come on, but then I look at this and I think to myself, like, I could just go Mitrovic to Darwin and I pick up 2 starts. I already have Saka.
Well,
if I
mean,
really wanted to,
is
I could
Darwin
go
that nailed
Gakpo.
on?
Oh, I think Darwin's nailed on at this point. I don't think
I don't know if he plays 90
Darwin
both games. I don't know. That's my only worry. I think Mo is the only out of the front 3 between Gakpo, Nunez, and Mo. I think only Mo is the one that I could have most faith in minutes. I don't know. I feel like they're not going to get. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think at this point, with the fact that the guy had a shoulder injury and then started 2 days later and scored the goal that he did, I think the guy is just starting to come on and show signs of what they paid for. And I think this would be the last moment to sit down a spitfiring Raging Bull. And with that, he'll probably come off the bench in both matches. The other option for me is you go down to like Nketiah from Mitrovic and go up from Martinelli to like Gakpo. And even if you get a start and a sub, you're still picking up 2 starts for 2 starts, and you're picking up 2 from a guy who's probably not going to play. Because all reports are is Mitrovic is out tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he won't be playing in the matchup on Friday. And I mean, we both know all Mitrovic does is just tease fantasy owners. It's the 2 weeks you don't have him, he hauls for 15 and 13, and then you make a move to pick him up, and he gets sent off 3 minutes in. And on his way off the pitch, pulls a hamstring, yelling at the ref. And then he misses 3 weeks. Costs you another transfer. Do you think I should move off James? Do you think I should make a move with the defense? Or would you just stay pat to the fact that I probably right now have 4 of the top 6 defenders in the game, including the 5th best budget defender overall?
Yeah, I don't, it's kind of crazy to say that you don't necessarily need to make a move when you have 2 free transfers going into a double game week like this one. I feel like if anything, I think moving down from James to a defender that has a double would be a good move. Maybe not necessarily Tarkowski. It doesn't have to be Tarkowski. It can be, let's see, it could be a Liverpool defender.
That's the problem. I can't. There's my other problem. I think Gomez and Matip will split the match week.
And Van Dijk is too much. Because
he's more expensive.
You have 1.5 in the bank, but he's not 1.5 more expensive, is he?
No, but I'd want to use that money, I think, to actually improve somewhere else. Like,
sure.
I have a hard time just carrying Mitrovic when I have 3 players not playing this week. So to make a transfer to a player that's actually probably should start, is a struggle I'm having. And that's the only reason I'm having a struggle with because right now I'm carrying Estupiñán, Trippier, and Rashford.
Right.
As non-players, but I don't think that a transfer out of any of those 3 players is actually prudent. The only one would probably be Trippier, because they have a couple of tough fixtures after it, and he has dried up a little bit on the attacking returns, and Newcastle aren't keeping the clean sheets they were. All that said, I think if I sell him, I lose $500,000 if I want to bring him back, and I know between now and the end of the season I'll want him again.
Yeah.
So it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I could move off Estupiñán, but I'm not making any money as a 4-6, 4-7 player that I'm going to buy back at 4-9 or 5. So it's like, that's what leads me to like James, Mahrez, Mitrovic. And if I want a different Arsenal player, which only would probably be Nketiah, then I think it's Martinelli. But I feel like that's like fool's gold for the plain fact that, Martinelli came out in the 70th minute and almost got a goal and an assist and multiple bonus points in the last matchup. And I just have this gut feeling now he starts both of these matches this week. Yeah. At least one of them, if not both.
Yeah. I just know it'll be tough going into a game week with just Gabriel and Bueno, really. So I think having to move James down to someone, I feel like that's going to be your best move, to at least have a third for sure playing defender.
Yeah, I mean, I could go down to Tarkowski, and I guess if I went down to Tarkowski there, I think if I went down to Tarkowski, then maybe I could make...
You think you could make Mitro to Darwin happen?
Oh, I could definitely do that. I can make Mitro to Darwin happen now, just without even using a second transfer. With the 1.5 I have, it just barely gets me there.
Got it.
Or it's like 0.4. So I think from there I'd probably have 1 million more. Then I would really have to Paul Bickler chimes in and says Tarkowski is the move in my opinion, which probably means it's the wrong move, which is normally how we talk ourselves into things, Paul. I do too. I think it's probably James to Tarkowski, which saves me, I think that's 1.6, which would give me 3.1. This is where I start to think to myself, well, could I get Mahrez to Mo somehow by then taking Mitro down? And
it all depends if you want to take a hit. If you want to take a hit, get Mo. That's it. If you want Mo, take a hit. If you don't want Mo, don't take a hit.
It's not as much as I don't want Mo. I don't want my team to be so unbalanced that I have to hit the wild card in 2 weeks because I wanted a double game week, and then he comes off in the 15th minute or something.
But how much is it unbalanced though? Because you're moving off Mahrez, who can be difficult to get minutes for. You're moving off Mitrovic, who isn't playing right now. It's tough to really know when he's going to play. And you're moving off James, who hasn't played. I understand his underlying stats, but you're moving for 3 guys that are actually playing. I feel like you might even be better off than where you're at now, long term.
Yeah, I'll have to play around with the numbers after this and see what I can get to and where I can go. It really depends on what level of striker. I mean, I guess I could drop down. Leeds does have a double game week coming in 29, and a couple decent fixtures. So maybe I can move down to like Nanto from Mitrovic, pick up the 1.9, pocket the 1.5. Pick up the money on Tarkowski, and then I could probably get up to Mo. But again, I look at all these moving parts. I take a -4, and as Paul always, as all things come back to with Bickler, it's purely Bamford under a bridge.
I love
obviously.
Bamford. He had that stretch last year, man. Bamford was so good. He was so good.
It was 2 years ago, but
it was 2 years ago. Oh my God.
It was 2 years ago. And since then, like, the Rolls Royce has pulled up, the waiter has showed up, the butler has come in, and he's realized, like, he's not under a bridge any longer, and therefore he's back to being Paul Bamford. I just called him. That's outstanding. He's Paul Bamford from this point forward.
Oh, so, Paulie.
Before we let Bickler get out of here with the Bamford comments, 1 or 2 moves for you this week, not ones for your team, but things that you think that folks should look out for, ideas for people, moves you would make if maybe you could make them.
Move to Mo if you have the money, if you have the ability, if you have 2 free transfers, like you probably should, and shouldn't have brought in João Felix for no reason. If you can get Mo. And then if you don't have Saka yet, it would be a good time to jump on Saka.
Bickler sharing some more Bamford tips of the night. He speaks like 9 languages fluently, turned down Harvard Business School for football, probably could solve world hunger. And he's not actually wrong. There's an old story about when he was like a youth player at Chelsea, and they called him up to like first team training. And literally, there was a guy there to help him get his boots ready for practice. And like John Terry or like one of the veteran Lampard or someone came up to him and was like, kid, you got to get this guy out of here and don't ever let him come back because these men are vicious and they will never, ever, ever let this end. And like he could never make it there because he was actually like stuck in being who he was. But then everyone around him would say he was like the most well-balanced kid. He had great parents. He had a great head on his shoulder, but he was never worried about anything because he knew that like life was better for him than it was for some of the top earners at the club. Like it didn't really matter what money he made at the time, which was kind of outstanding. But that's one of those great stories because I could like see John Terry walking over to him and being like, so if you don't punch this guy in the face in front of all these grown men, I'm going to punch you. Like it would just be outstanding. But I digress. Mainly because I couldn't think of a really good idea to come up with a good story here. There's not much that I can actually recommend to folks to do other than stay true to whatever your philosophy is right now. If you think you're going to play into game week 29 with free transfers and run up to it, go for it. If you think you're going to play your bench boost in 33 and wild card in 32, do it, right? But I do believe this is a season where you have to make a plan. Because in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to know what the main like 5-week run is between 28 and 33. This whole thing is going to be decided in that window between the doubles and the blanks. So how you deploy your free hit, how you deploy your wild cards. I'm thinking free hit 28, wild card 29 for the big week, and then play like my bench boost in 32. 31, something like that. Might turn out to be absolute fool's gold, might be a moronic move, or, I could be just thinking up a big story right now that doesn't work out. But I really believe that you have to like look at a couple weeks out and you have to plan it out because that's how you make the moves. We've been saying it all year long. Watch your chips, play your strategies, and then hold true. BJ says his plan is to drink heavily. Luckily for us, it's usually the plan. I think with the drink heavily part, it works if all you want to do is get drunk. But if you want to do well in fantasy, you can't drink that heavily or you fall asleep and forget to make transfers.
At least start the drinking heavily once the games start.
It's a good point. Only start drinking after 7 a.m. and the deadline has come. Unless, of course, it's this match week, folks. And the deadline rolls in at 1:30 Eastern tomorrow afternoon. So for those of you who hate the fact that there is a deadline and lineup lock, no, it is tomorrow at 1:30, not Saturday morning.
We should don't remind Bickler anything though. We should just let him
get those moves in now. So, all right. So for everyone listening tonight, as always, we greatly appreciate you following us. Please give us a like. Go to our YouTube page. I'm going to post the link to the login page right now where you can subscribe. Hopefully that'll come through in the chats. Go ahead and click on that. Give it a like. Give it a subscribe. Leave us a comment. Send us a message if you want to get involved or be involved with the programming in some way. We would love to have you, or as a contributor. Send us a message and let us know how you can get involved. For myself and the Polish Prince, this is just another Fantasy Premier League show. We will see you all next Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern, where hopefully we will be reviewing both of our huge double game weeks, or at least mine. And maybe Bickler's win. Good night, everybody.